Erica,
Yes,
on the first item, the American Legion's request for a parking space, another parking space.
yes.
I am an officer and I did vote for that with the Legion.
Okay, you're not a member of the board, so it's okay.
All righty, okay, everybody knows that now though. Okay.
You mean when he's work on it, right?
Morning. Looks like we'll give this a few more minutes. Hopefully get a few more members logged in. I know it's been a little while.
How many do you need for a quorum?
Good question. Erica, are we didn't have a chance to talk about this, but I presume that Patrick will be a voting member, essentially stepping back into Mike's place. Would that be?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, and I talked about that with Patrick and with the town manager, and Patrick actually just joined the meeting.
I saw that. Perfect. Okay, I just wanted to be sure that that was how we.
But it looks like we have no one from well, are you the rep today from DPW, Ray? Ray, can you hear me? You're muted. Ray, can you hear me? And no one from police or fire.
Right.
which is, those three are really needed.
Right. I mean, I think we would have a quorum, but I don't know that. I think that Patrick, Mickey, Jack, and I, as four, would make a quorum out of the seven. And I know there's been some folks waiting
Yes.
for things, so, but is there any chance of checking in with?
I think Chief Pittman might be away, but let me just double check.
Or maybe we can get Angus or.
Hi, Patrick.
Okay.
Welcome.
Hey there, good morning.
How are you?
Good, thanks.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Happy to be here.
I've been watching the NPDC meetings. I usually catch all of those, so I've seen your good work already getting going.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm trying to get my feet wet a little bit. It's going to take a little while, but
Yeah.
We're getting there.
Well, there's a lot of I think synergy and a bit of a crossover that happens kind of between this work group and discussing, just transportation and traffic and those sort of things. And then, you or formerly Mike would really kind of be the liaison to help tie those things together, that, what some of the things we talk about, how some of that gets tied into planning and, which way it gets implemented.
Excellent. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know we've had a couple of discussions I've had a couple of discussions with folks around the island who kind of mentioned that there is a lot of the connection there between some of the work the commission is doing, and then also some of the more like specific oriented work that the traffic safety work group is doing.
And I presume, since you spoke with Erica, but just to be clear, we are advisory to the town manager. So this work group is, doesn't have regulatory power or, to make, I guess I would say, hard decisions, but a lot of times more routine or minuscule things that, come up as discussion that could be handled, that might have been something like missing signs or, trimming some bushes, things that, can be, with the DPW involved and then, handled. We try to do what we can, but being very respectful, not to cross a line for something that really the town manager needs to, consider. So it's not always a perfectly clear line, I would say, but we try our best to, take care of what we can, and then, pass along what really needs to be considered by her, and then ultimately the select board. So it looks like with the addition of Mr. Murphy, we might as well, I think, proceed. And I guess the only question would be whether, Ray, are you sort of acting as a liaison for the DPW, or are you gonna vote?
Ray doesn't have any sound,
Okay.
so I think he'll be observing.
Well, we know what Ray can do. He can hold up signs.
Ray could try he could also call in and see if that works. You could use the call in link, Ray.
Okay, well, we'll take it as we have done in the past, where, Ray's institutional knowledge is extremely helpful and can, sometimes help us, but we won't actually include the DPW in the roll call for the votes. So with that, I don't have the formal remote script here, but I have one that I can probably abbreviate from other meetings. And just try to make sure I cover what needs to be covered. So good morning. This is Arthur Gasparo, Chair of the Traffic Safety Work Group. Welcome to the May 19th meeting. This open meeting is being conducted remotely pursuant to the Chapter 20 Acts of 2021. Preliminary matter. Permit me to confirm all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Mr. Rowland?
Here.
Mr. Reed?
There's two of them.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Mr. Gardner? I see you.
He is in the bathroom right now, so
Okay.
yeah, I'm so sorry about that.
No problem at all. If you could just, we'll continue on, but then get his video going or just pipe in and let us know that he's present.
He's back.
Once he's available, that would be great.
All right.
And
do that.
Mr. Murphy.
That for me again, Art?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I already get you once? All
All good.
right. Thanks. And staff on a client name, please respond on the affirmative. Ms. Mooney.
Present.
Thank you. So for this meeting, we'll be convening by video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. The meeting will be aired at a later time on the Town of Nantucket YouTube channel. Please note this meeting is being recorded. All attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you. And take care not to screen share your computer or anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for the effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I'll go down the line of members, inviting each to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For your response, please wait till the chair yields the floor and state your name before speaking. Members of the public wishing to participate in the meeting must use their full name for Zoom access. If full names are not used, people will not be allowed to participate in the discussion. The commission reserves the right to remove any member of the public from the meeting who doesn't use a full name or acts inappropriately. And finally, each vote in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. And with that, we will turn to the agenda. And are there any questions, comments, or concerns with the agenda as posted and published? Hearing none, we'll consider that adopted by unanimous consent. Is there any public comment for items which are not otherwise on the agenda? I'm looking at the participant list, and please use the hand raise or speak up if you need to. Not seeing any. So we'll move on to the official business on the published agenda, which is item 1, to review a request for an additional accessible parking space in front of the American Legion at 21 Washington Street. And Erica, do you want me to share the packet or do you want to do it?
Happy to do it. I've got it up and ready.
Perfect.
Can you see this?
Yes.
So here's your request from the American Legion. I grabbed this off of the town GIS. The American Legion is here in blue. You can see the existing handicap parking space, which is in blue in front of it. And they are requesting one more space. And the Commission on Disability, I had sent this request to them just to get some initial input, and they are in favor.
And the additional space would go,
Up to you.
what's that, up to us?
I would assume, I'm not sure if it would be better, the space in front of it or the space behind it. I'm not sure, so.
Okay, we'll open it up to committee discussion, and Mr. Rowland.
Thanks, Art. Brenda and I looked at this and we're thinking that it's, that strip certainly can use another accessible space. I know the Legion wants it close to them. We're wondering if maybe it could be put up closer to the coffee shop and it makes it a little bit closer to town and some of the other uses in that area. So there's a blank spot just south of the coffee shop. I don't know if that's too far for the request from the Legion, but that's what we were thinking.
Oh, Eric is on it. I was trying to do the same on my other screen. Perfect.
So it looks like right now there's a yellow line here at the entrance where people cannot park. The accessible space is here in between these two lines. You can see the very faded blue. But there are, there's at least 1 or 2 parking spaces here in front of it. But I know Mr. Rowland is talking about over here, but there are some residences over here. And there's also a bench from the Artists Association they're refusing to remove. I don't know if that would make it accessible.
So if we could, Erica, could you move back towards the Handlebar Cafe? I think what Mr. Rowland was suggesting, there's a crosswalk that's there that goes over. Right, so, but you have a yellow line all through there. So was there a more specific spot that you had in mind from your site visit, Mickey?
Yes, it's just beyond, from this view, just beyond the yellow line in front of that building there.
So right
It's-
there.
Yeah, an advantage is that it is close to the crosswalk and it's an easy in and out. It's not like you're doing the parallel parking shuffle. You can just pull right in. So it's easier for people that might, be of that age that need it.
But then again, you've got things in
Yeah.
the sidewalk that make it maybe harder to get by to get to the Legion.
It is going to be harder. You're right. And I hadn't really thought of that, but I'm pretty sure those widths and obstacles are still allowing the appropriate access down there. So.
Any
I'm just-
other? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just, it's just that if you put them right next to each other, it kind of limits the variety of uses they could service. And, I know the Legion made the request, but this will also benefit a lot of other uses in the area too.
Thank you.
Erica, can I speak for the Legion?
That's up to Art.
Just give us 1 minute,
Mhm.
Ms. Norton, and we'll go through the committee first and then certainly open it up to the public.
Yeah, because I can sort of brief you on what our discussion on it was.
Okay, well, why don't you go ahead then?
I had made the discussion right in front of the building, right in front of Lobster Trap, and they didn't want it there. So I think they are amenable to it being further up the street, such as where Mr. Rowland suggested. Or I don't know if you could do any of this over in the Wilkie Square mess. Set aside one of those as a handicap. Of course, that the discussion behind that is now you have to cross the road. So that was basically our discussion and our thoughts on it. So I think they would be fine with it. Yeah, right there in front of that residence.
That's very, very helpful. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other work group members, thoughts or comments or suggested motion? I'll go. I would be inclined to defer to the Commission on Disability recommendation and as well, and then knowing that the applicant would also be okay with that. I think I would be supportive if there was a motion to put in ADA space at that location. Do we know what number that residence is?
I can figure it out right now.
Okay,
17.
okay.
So Art, I'll make that motion that we put the new accessible parking space right in front of 17 Washington Street.
Thank you. And is there a second?
I'll second.
The motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Mr. Rowland,
Aye.
Mr. Murphy,
Aye.
Mr. Reed,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Looks like we don't have Jack yet, but I think we still have a quorum with us four, so I think we're in good shape.
Jack, are you on there?
I think his, whoever was helping him was gonna let us know
Okay,
when he's gonna join the meeting, and we'll note that accordingly. So that motion carries unanimously. That would be a recommendation to the town manager and ultimately the select board to make that change, I believe. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have to review request for an accessible parking space on Sunset Hill at the rear of 35 Westchester Street.
I'll walk you through this as well, and I will publicly disclose that this property is owned by a very distant relative. So Marcia Tooker lives at 35 Westchester Street, which is her actual address here, but she has always gotten access through Sunset Hill Lane. Her main entrance is right here where this little red circle is. She is in her 90s and is in need of an accessible parking space. And there is a driveway down here, but if I'll pull up a GIS so you can see it, it's very, it has a steep embankment and she would never, ever be able to get up there.
If I could briefly interrupt you, Ms. Mooney, Mr. Gardner, welcome. And Ms. Noren, could we just note for the minutes, Mr. Gardner joined the meeting?
So here's the property. Here's the driveway proper. But as you know, there's a staircase that leads all the way up to Sunset Hill. And let's see if we can get this over here. Here is the rear of the property where they access right there.
The
there-
space should be proposed where the rear car is, just for clarity.
The door is here, so it's up to you. It's up to you where it would go, but just an accessible space somewhere in front of here, if you're inclined.
Okay, thank you. Seems to me that making it maybe the first parking space in the row might make the most sense, as opposed to having a space, then an ADA space, and then other parking. That's just a thought. I'll open it up to the
Easy to get into, yeah.
work group.
Are
Anybody
they
have-
asking for handicap there?
Yes,
Okay, sorry, I just came in late. Yeah, that'd be a good place. That's in front of John Gardner's old house.
Yes.
any further discussion, or Mr. Rowland?
Yeah, I think it's I'd leave it up to the, whatever's preferable to the applicant, but I do agree with you. The first space makes more sense in terms of just general order in the area. So I think that's the right spot for it.
Any
I
other?
do too. I think it's a good spot there in front.
I actually have a quick question, if
Yes.
it's all right. Is there a process can the public go through the same process to remove a space once it's no longer necessary? They just take it to this group here?
Yes.
Okay, I see.
And I would say as well that if, the town or through any entity, really anybody, if it, became apparent that perhaps it, a particular space no longer had use, it should be revisited. With that, is there a motion to approve the request to
So
install an
moved.
ADA space in the first spot on Sunset Hill?
Yes, also move.
So a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. How do you vote, Mr. Rowland?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Gardner?
I,
The chair votes aye. Thank you. Next, we have a request to review a request for a sign for a drive slow blind driveway before the driveway to 107 Matticat Road heading southwest due to overgrown evergreen trees.
I'm going to apologize because I forgot to send Dan Brownell the link. I did this morning, but it was a little late. But I have talked to him fairly extensively. He lives at 107 Matticat Road, and when he pulls out of his driveway, which is here, these trees which were planted, and I'm not sure if it was the town planting them or the owner next door, but they keep growing out, and it inhibits the sight visibility of the traffic coming over this hill. You can see the car there. And so he's requesting a slow blind driveway. And he did note that he has actually been paying his landscapers to try to trim these back. I don't know if that's his responsibility or not, but they're definitely overgrowing and impeding sight visibility.
Okay. I guess part of the question there might be, well, whether it's a maintenance item and it's within a road layout or whether they're actually on private property. My sense is they might be on private property there. And perhaps the sign might be the way to go, but we'll open it up for discussion. We don't have the applicant here, but any thoughts from work group members on the installation of the sign or any other actions? Ms. Mooney?
I have one comment. Maybe I should pass this on to the real estate specialist in the DPW to discuss a possible encroachment letter for the homeowners to be responsible for cutting that back instead of, the owner of 107 Matticat Road has offered to continue trim back the branches and pay for that, but maybe an encroachment letter is.
I guess I like that idea, but I guess the question is, we don't know whether there is an encroachment or not. So perhaps starting with the real estate specialist to maybe have a couple of survey stakes put along the edge of the road layout might be a good way to determine that.
I'll talk to him about it.
Okay.
Just as on an aside.
But before we add additional signage, or was the suggestion, should we do the sign? Or what I think the group should discuss is whether a sign is warranted, as well as checking into a possible encroachment.
Investigation into encroachments can be time consuming. So I would suggest, if you are so inclined, to discuss the installation of a sign for a blind driveway.
Yes, go ahead. Somebody have a comment?
Do we know how far the visibility line is here? Is this a speed problem we're looking at again? And we're just throwing signs at? I guess that's my question. If the visibility line doesn't look terrible from that picture, but if we're talking truly that this is just a speed issue, it kind of goes to how we've been reacting at the front of the Matticat Road.
I'm not sure.
Just don't want to throw signs at something that's not going to correct the problem.
Yeah, I also wonder how effective, those signs really are. In one respect, you have a homeowner or an applicant making the request. Yes.
Looking at the picture, and it's the one of the vehicle approaching from the east, I guess. It seems that when the trees are pruned back, there's quite a bit of visibility from the driveway. It's not like you can't see them. He has to stick his nose out into the street. They're just coming fast. Visibility doesn't seem to be the problem. But maybe that's still a reason for a sign, just because they're driving too fast. I don't know.
If you note here in the original letter where it says the situation, it actually says that oncoming cars going west. They're traveling fast down that part of Mattocket Road. They see where the road opens up, and they just start going faster. And then with the trees, when they grow out, it hit, because they're coming so fast and you can't see them coming right away. That's what I'm getting out of this.
I would be inclined to start off to figure out whether the trees are in the public way or not before we add signage, but that's just me.
I agree, Chair.
Is there a motion to defer to the real estate specialist for further investigation?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. How do you vote, Mr. Rowland?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
Mr. Gardner?
Aye.
The chair votes aye.
May I ask a question? So
Yes.
if the ultimate problem is speeding, how is that addressed?
We could also defer to the police. I think they're well aware of the situation on Mattocket Road, but
I'm gonna tell, Dan Brownell is here. He just jumped in. I know you just voted, but do you want to hear from him?
of course. Is that okay with everybody? I guess I should be sure of the consent of the work
Yeah.
group. Thanks. Mr. Brownell?
Oh, hello. I'm sorry.
I'm
I'm late.
sorry, it was all my fault.
All right, we'll go over. I'll just give you a quick brief. We just discussed this item, and our feeling is initially that we really should try to find out through the town real estate specialist whether those trees are on private property or actually in the road layout. And that the ultimate problem there is if they're on public property and need to be removed and or trimmed and maintained by town staff, that hopefully would go a long way to improving the driver site distance and alleviating the problem, as well as any kind of a burden on you related to a property that's not your own for maintenance. So what we just voted was to defer this to the town's real estate specialist with a suggestion that perhaps a surveyor put some property line stakes along there so that they could determine just where those trees are, and then we could revisit it as to how, depending on where they are in relation to the legal boundary sideline of the road, how that gets handled. Obviously, we're aware of that there are speed concerns on Mattocket Road. We've been discussing that for some years, as well as island wide. And I think the police, we usually have a representative. They're not with us tonight, but or this morning. We can always let them know again, there was a concern in this area. And they're facing their own challenges with respect to staffing and such, but to have a look at it. But before we just put signs up that we think are sometimes of limited effectiveness, how many people are like, can we get at the real solution? I think would be, can we improve the site distance on a more permanent basis? So as a group, we're thinking that we would take a two-phase approach to this. First, before we put a sign up, we try to be somewhat careful island wide, really, in terms of signs. Not saying that it might not get to that ultimately, but let's figure out what's going on with the trees and then go from there. And I'll open it up to you for anything you might want to add or.
Oh, I just want to thank you all for spending some time on it. I'm conscious you've already spent time on it, so I'll be very brief. I do appreciate you looking at this. I think you're right. I was thinking a sign is more of a Band-Aid than really fixing the issue. And I understand why people pick up speed there, because they're getting out of town, and then it's a little bit of a hill and it turns a bit to the right. So you end up with a blind, just right there. one ends up with a blind spot, even if you're driving, regular, within the speed limit. It's just the way that the road curves and humps a little bit. And, we just have deliveries and things like that and propane. So a lot of times it's a truck coming out, it's difficult to see. So what we've been doing is just out of our own expense, just paying Bartlett Tree, who takes care of our property a little bit, to just trim them back once a year, just so it's not a real safety concern. But it is, if you come out and they're growing towards the southern sun, so there's not that much you can do. Even when we trim them back, we're down to the trunks in a few places. So I don't know how they were put in originally. I don't know who decided. I think they're pretty, but it is a little bit of a safety concern, and I do feel bad for the drivers coming, even if they're not speeding. It's very difficult to see given the turn and the hill there. So I appreciate you spending time on it, and thank you. And whatever you all decide will be fine with me.
Thank you. We'll see where the specialist ends up with it and see what we can find on the trees. Mr. Rowland.
Yeah, I'm curious, technically, looking at the pictures again, you can see the trees, the tree trunks and the branches are obviously growing well towards the street. What is technically an encroachment? Is it the tree trunk itself, or can branches that grow into a right of way constitute an encroachment also? In terms of
Yeah, Mickey, what happens is that's why you can see those trunks, because the branches have been growing, as you all know, that's the southern side, so they grow that way. And so again, what I've been doing each year is paying Bartlett, $100 or something to come and just trim them back just so no one gets hurt. I don't know that the trunks as they are now are that much of an encroachment on the sight line. They're going to get bigger, obviously, over time, but that's sort of a small thing in comparison. Each spring, you see a bunch of sprouts for those branches coming up, and it just makes it difficult. You probably cut back maybe half the distance as you normally would have with someone coming around the bend there.
All right, we'll have to look at the width of the Matticat Road layout. The property lines aren't always where folks think they are, especially with road layouts. And that would be along 2 Maxi Pond Road for the minutes. So we'll have a look at it and see what we can do, Mr. Brownell.
Okay, much appreciated, everyone. Thank you so much. Sorry
Okay.
I was late.
No problem at all. Take care. If there's no further discussion on that matter, we will move on to item 4, which was to review a request for a crosswalk across Airport Road at Miller Lane or Evergreen Way. Erica, are you going to bring something up, or would you like
Sure.
me to?
So the request came from a resident in that area, which includes Evergreen Way, Daffodil Lane, Mayflower Circle, and Little Island Lane. They connect to the Airport Road via Evergreen and Miller Lane. And they did note that there is a crossing at, oh, here, do you want me to, you got it?
Yep.
They did note that there is a crossing here at the Nantucket Inn, but you'd have to go into the Nantucket Inn property, and there's staircase, so it's not easy with strollers or anything like that. So they were hoping to install a crosswalk either at the end of Miller Lane or the end of Evergreen Lane to cross over there. And of course, at Evergreen, there's no, it would be a crosswalk to nowhere because it's literally just a grassy shoulder. Whereas if you go up to Miller Lane, you can at least cross, to this, there's a bike path here, and you could create a little ramp there to cross over.
Thank you for that. So I think the discussion would be whether, this is in such close proximity to the Nantucket Inn. You're going to do another one right here, which really is going to serve I guess, part of the question for walkers on this side of the road. There's no shoulder at all on this side, right? All those bushes along here are right out against the edge of the road, whereas you have the bike path over on this side. And then I guess I would say, at least at Evergreen, you have a sidewalk on Evergreen. You have a lot more residences. There's a lot of kids at this bus stop. And there is, even though the trees are along this parking lot, there is a dirt trail that goes along here. So it would space them out a little bit better if we were going to do any crosswalk at all. If you were to come opposite of this sidewalk across, you have a curve back here. I think we want to be concerned with visibility as cars are traveling on this road at 35 or 20, miles an hour coming around the corner to a crosswalk. There's perhaps, some thought to be given there. Whether this in fact is a good idea. I know that in part of our past discussions on crosswalks is being careful that people don't have a false sense of security as well. So I guess I'll open it up for discussion. If anyone had any thoughts on crosswalk at either location or simply no crosswalk at all, I would see as the alternatives, or anything else that you may want to discuss. Mr. Murphy.
This is my neighborhood, just to put that out there for everybody. So I'm here all the time, and as you know, Art, that you said exactly what my main concern at the Evergreen is. You travel this road as well, and the traffic coming down. There's been numerous times where I'll pull out of Evergreen onto Airport Road and all of a sudden there's a car right behind me. And it's not because of not seeing the car pulling out in front of it. It's because they're coming at such a speed. So I'm really nervous about putting any crosswalk there that would give that sense of security. And we're really not putting them to an area that's safe even with that dirt shoulder, because that split rail for the airport and the Evergreen going into that area as well. If there's anything, at least at Miller Lane, there's a roadway. Now, even that provides its own issues, whereas the shuttle buses for the inn, especially during the summertime, are in and out of there, but it's a much more viable line of sight. But again, offers that right across from Miller Lane's a drainage point for the airport road. It's on airport property kind of thing. I don't know if that's airport property or town property there. That I know the airport takes care of it, but both have its challenges. But I personally would feel that it would be a much safer crosswalk at Miller than it would be at Evergreen, just for the speed of the traffic coming down Monahasset.
It was on Miller's Lane via this place too, because at least it takes you someplace. You're crossing the road, then you go down Miller's Lane to the houses or whatever are down there.
Mr.
Passes
Rowland?
you to the hotel as well.
Yeah, I would agree with leaning more towards the Miller Lane area, and for that reason that it gets you to a crosswalk. Also, the crosswalk down by the inn is kind of only serving a few people going to the inn. It leads to stairs, as Erica points out. So it doesn't serve bicyclists or strollers or that kind of thing at all. So I think another one would be warranted down by Miller.
Would it make sense to remove this one? And then the people coming to the inn would come over here, but a lot of the inn traffic, are people walking from the airport with rolling bags and whatnot. I mean, they're likely to still cross there. So I'm not advocating, I'm just putting out all items for a discussion, I do think there is some, like, where would this, as Mr. Murphy noted, right here is the drainage, catch basin that falls off the road, it's got to be at least a foot lower. And you don't really have a good connection over to this bike path. I think we'd either have to go further to the south, and then it doesn't actually get you to the bike path. I don't know. I don't have a good answer here. Maybe there just isn't one, but maybe there's more of a master planning needed for sort of given the Monahasset bike path plans that have been done, and maybe get into the works at some point to take care of that. That's also out there. So we don't have to take action. We don't want to create something that's worse. I think we have to be careful.
It does look like, when I'm looking at my street view on Google Maps, and there's two catch basins or storm drains right opposite Miller Lane. And it seems that if you split those and put the crosswalk in between them, and that would probably put you on the south side of that intersection.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Then you'd definitely have to ramp up to the sidewalk.
So the crosswalk would go here,
Right.
the south side of Miller Lane.
Yep. It would get you up to the sidewalk. And I think, it's a safety issue. I think that kids in the neighborhood should have a safe way of crossing that road.
Can I just make a quick word,
Well,
ask a
please.
question or make a comment regarding the potential recommendation to eliminate the Nantucket Inn crosswalk? I think that we should investigate with the planning office first with any discussion of that, because that might be a requirement of their special permit.
All right, and I don't even know if we're going there or not. It was just
Yeah,
putting
I
everything
just wanted to
out.
put that out there.
Thanks. I lost my ability to spin here. All right, that's the end of that. So it sounds like you can see the two catch basins here, that the discussion is leaning towards a recommendation for a crosswalk across Airport Road at the south side of Miller Lane. That's what I'm hearing. If there was going to be a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second,
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Sorry, who made that second? Was it Jack?
Jack.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I think the only thing is we should possibly engage the airport on this too, so we're not upsetting anything that they have going on there. I think they might be a partner in this as well.
I mean, I'm sure we could, inform them.
Yeah.
I could, I'll be talking to the airport manager. I'd be happy to let him know in case he had any concerns.
Thank you. I thought you might have an in on that.
I think the removal of the other one probably would have been concern more than the addition of another one. There is a lot of pilots that use that other one. Okay, so the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. How do you vote, Mr. Rowland?
Ray, I don't know how I was Ray has a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, just real quick on that, you'd still want to do like a landing or asphalt landing on the other side? Is that going to be part of it, or you just send them into the grass between the two?
My sense would be to just do a crosswalk to the grass at this point, and then if there's some future project to add and fix that up a little bit, then, because we don't want to delay installation of a crosswalk that could be painted with having to do an asphalt apron. But I mean, it's not a bad idea. I just don't know how that would get implemented.
Okay, I just didn't know how much of a slope there was there, that's all.
I think that part's not so bad, as the slope, I think, is down to the catch basins that are somewhat recessed and bermed down versus between the two catch basins, as was noted. I think that's, I could see a use for a connector, but maybe we start with the crosswalk to see how that goes first. And then, if a path develops there, and we can take it from there.
That and were there any trees on the other side of that other catch basin? No, it's clear, okay.
No, that's all pretty good, I think. I think
On
that
the
would work
overhead,
out.
it looked like it, so.
I think it'll work out pretty well. Other than I'm not sure where the traffic on the other side of the road is coming from, but that's a bit of a different issue. How many people coming down Miller, and then, what you have going on along, Airport Road with the stuff in here. But let's take it one step at a time. We have a request and we have a motion. I think we can, paint a crosswalk without too much difficulty, and then, hopefully that helps and we can see how things develop. So if there's no further discussion, Mr. Rowland, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy,
Aye.
Mr. Reed,
Aye.
and Mr. Gardner.
Aye.
Okay, that chair votes aye, that carries unanimously. I'm gonna stop sharing. And we'll move on to a request to designate Easy Street between Cambridge Street and Broad Street as a no standing zone. I brought this forward for discussion by the work group. It's been somewhat, I think, discussed over the years. In my observation of traffic patterns and impacts, implications, I have for years noted that the use by the delivery trucks at the location shown in the photo, as well as on the backside of the Dreamland sometimes, causes quite a lot of backup of traffic along Washington that extends back to Salem and Candle, and really just your overall circulation pattern of the town and of traffic movements is, and especially with the boat in the summer season, with the more boats per day between fast boats and regular boats. I just don't think that this is a spot. I understand deliveries need to be made. I understand they need places to go. But I don't think this is a good practice. And the discussion that we've had in the past, essentially that the delivery trucks are exempt for 15 minutes under the rules and regulations, even in no parking zones or really in any traveled way, unless it's designated as a no standing zone. So that was my recommendation, but certainly open to discussion on that.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I think this is a great idea, but I'm leery because we did this on Federal Street by the hub, and it's done absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
They're still parked there. They still do everything. And they do what they want with a loading zone right across the street that's wide and empty. So,
I know it's frustrating. I was hoping, I understand the police are limited, but I also was hoping that we could have some discussion, and this might spark some further discussion with the police about enforcing that no standing zone. Given the police aren't here, if we wanted to defer this for a month, I'm okay with it. I'm not trying to make anything. I was hoping that for the summer season, it could be an improvement that could be made. My thinking and reasoning for wanting to have a discussion at this meeting was that perhaps as the police start ramping up for community service officers and their program for the summer, it could be kind of a fresh, start that they go over with the downtown patrolmen that, these two areas essentially. So instead of just having the one at the hub, you have two spots that you kind of give the delivery trucks get a bit of carte blanche all over, but you have two spots that I see that really impact that their practice on a daily basis impacts traffic flow so significantly that it just shouldn't be allowed for the greater public good, was my thinking. But I'm open to, and maybe with having two spots instead of just one, it's more of a a policy or an understanding that there are a couple of spots that they would like them to look out for. But I can't speak for the police. I was just hoping that maybe we could positively encourage that.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, I had a question about whether or not the town has pursued no standing zones within a certain duration or time period in the past, just to allow certain areas to be used off peak.
So far, there's only been a single no standing zone established. And so it's a fairly new concept, if you will. And that's the one that's on Federal Street right next to the hub, just off of Main Street. And as noted, that's been in for like over a year, and I haven't seen a single enforcement or change in behavior at that spot. And that's a spot that really causes some congestion downtown. I think that you could go to a timed approach to that, but it's somehow that may even further complicate enforcement as well as practice. There is, of course, deliveries are needed. There's no doubt about that. And how do you accommodate, both to some extent? There are some other, but we also, I think, have been very good about providing quite a few loading zones, much like we do with the accessible spaces. And in some cases doing time limits on the loading zones where they revert to on-street parking after certain hours. So we have done that, but the no standing, and again, if I don't know what the hours would really be if you were to do that here, that would help them, because I think both want to happen at the same time. The deliveries are happening during the day when the boats are coming and going at full capacity. You could maybe think about a seasonal type approach to that, but even, when it wouldn't be such a problem in the wintertime, if you will, but you're also not getting as many deliveries there. So, and I think that the more you change things, the harder it is to enforce and expect consistent behavior, or compliance. So I think there are a lot of factors there, and I'm not trying to, invent this or figure it all out at once. I'm trying to figure out one spot that I've seen. And, but maybe it's best to table this and you can look at it as well. And if we have other thoughts, we could put it on the agenda next month. It depends, I guess, unless there was support for this.
Sorry.
Mr. Roll.
I think it's a bad situation and all summer long. And I think the sooner we deal with it, the better. I can't see a good reason for putting it off if it's supported as a proper idea. I'd say we deal with it now and move forward.
Is that a motion?
I'd make that a motion.
I'll second for discussion if I could still.
Yes, so the motion has been made and seconded for discussion. Mr. Murphy?
I think we need to, and we've tried this past, and I think we were successful at one point in time in bringing the truck companies to the table, the people who actually drive the trucks or the supervisors for those trucks, because I'm 100% in support of the idea of this, but it's kind of like putting back to the, driveway ahead, blind driveway ahead, where we're placing signs that are just there because they're a sign, and whether they're the ones, the trucking companies are the ones that are causing the issue. And if we tell them, look, this is what we're looking, you have to help us out here because we've given you these spaces and you're not using them. You have to help us out in making sure that your drivers are in the right places, or else this is where we're going. I think if we bring them to the table, at least offer them the chance to be at the table to correct the issue that we all know we have, I think that would go a long way as well. And not one person who talks to all the truck drivers. They need to be here because those companies need to be the ones buying into this.
So I think the people that we're talking about are Cisco and US Foods, right? So there's two.
Cape Cod Express as well, I would include in that as, but I think they're probably one of the more compliant companies.
And I think that's a good idea. I guess I just want, I think that's a good idea regardless as you head into a summer season. But the question is a bit of a chicken and an egg. Do you do it and let them know that, look, we've given you all these other areas, you get a lot of break under the regs, parking places, but we've got these two spots that we just can't let happen anymore. So we've designated them as such. So maybe you make the designation and then have an outreach to them to let them know about it. Would be I think a good approach, but.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If you vote to designate this area a no standing location, where are the delivery trucks going to park? Because the closest one is at the end of Oak Street on South Water or on South Water Street, or maybe South Beach Street Extension too, but it's gonna be a bit of a hike for these guys to get to, say, Easy Street Cantina and.
Right. I think the Easy Street Cantina is the one place that is the biggest challenge for the deliveries. The ones on the strip, I understand, are delivered through the alley. They park on, I can't remember the little road behind the juice bar. And as well as on Oak Street. And the other fact is they can actually park, they could perhaps pull around the corner and park in front of the old Schooners. You know, if they were to it's just probably a lot easier where they're going, because they still don't have to use the loading zones under the regulations, which is part of what we're running into. We're just saying that you can go anywhere else essentially, and that's what you're doing. You just can't be in these two spots, you know, in this spot. This one causes a problem, so adjust a bit. So that would be part of what I was thinking. Would be that they could go either around the corner, or have to figure out on Oak Street, or maybe for that one delivery, they either have to adjust timing to be able to get a different spot. That's just my, and that gets back to maybe the loading zone timing has to be adjusted on a different loading zone if needed. But I think that right in that turn lane and next to the Dreamland, where you narrow Easy Street up and cause such a backup, I mean, I don't think that going around the corner in front of Schooners is a lot better either, right? You're gonna still that's gonna cause probably a different issue with people coming around there. But I don't know that if we're gonna consider the overall public good of all of our traffic flow and downtown compared to delivery to a single restaurant, and it might be a little bit more burdensome versus the impact on our entire community and all the visitors coming and going and residents from the boat on a daily basis. I don't think we should just not do anything for that reason.
Yeah, and I'm not speaking one way or the other. I'm anticipating a question that's going to be asked, and making sure that we have a good response for that.
Mr. Gardner?
That truck that parks on Federal Street corner by the hub, he goes in and parks, and he's there a long time because he's got like 5 kids with him and with dollies, and they deliver all over the whole center of town. They do from that one spot by the hub. That's why he's there so long. I sit there a lot and listen to him. He's sending them down the Straight Wharf, Island Service Wharf, the whole Washington Street, every place with just dolly freight. So that's why he's there so long. The main guy just stays right there and just keeps unloading onto these dollies.
Well, I think we have a discussion in 2 agenda items that we could talk about that one a little further.
Right.
Instead of just easy, for Easy Street. I've observed that too. I guess we have a motion on the table and discussion on the Easy Street no standing zone.
Right.
And so I would think that if we create it, it's going to give us we're going to be more likely to get the attention and bring to the table the delivery companies than if we don't create it and just ask them to talk to us. I don't know, which goes first, but
probably doing the same thing. The reason they're there so long is because they're sending these kids out with the dollies.
yeah, but maybe they need to be in in an actual loading zone, or a different spot than in the main
Right.
the main artery to the steamship.
And Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had some thoughts, Mr. Reed.
Yeah, I generally agree with the intent of what is being proposed here, but I would say that for me personally, I don't have enough context at this time to vote affirmatively, but I generally, based on the discussion, think it all makes sense. I think I just want to hear from the police to make sure they were comfortable with that approach, because it would be an enforcement action on their end if someone were to report a violation, I would assume. And then the other thing that I would want to kind of understand a little bit better is just the logistics of how people service that location, how they would do it, as Ms. Mooney kind of alluded to. But generally, I think I agree that all of the points made make sense. It's for the general public good. It doesn't really make sense to allow someone to just stand there, and especially during peak busy times.
Thank you. So I guess we do have a motion on the table, and we could either take a vote on it, or we could agree to defer it for a month and see if we could get, maybe put a little more, have a look at it now that it's been brought forward, and maybe have a discussion and hopefully have police at the next meeting.
Good.
Mr. Rowland, you made the motion, so, and it's been seconded, so it's really up to you. We could take it to a vote, or I think you could withdraw the motion and we could table it for a month. I'm not sure that how the vote would go.
Oh, I'm happy to do whatever the commission or the work group says, but let's just take it for a vote. If it passes, it passes. If not, we'll defer it till later.
Well, my fear is if it doesn't pass as proposed, then we're sort of we can't just bring things forward that are voted down again. I don't think is a good practice.
Can we make another vote, another motion to defer it till later after that?
You can just withdraw your motion, Mickey, and then make that motion.
That's fine. If that's the consensus, I'm happy to do that.
So the motion's been withdrawn, and the consensus would be to put this on next month's agenda and see if we can work on it a little bit more and maybe get consensus, reuse consent, but to get us to a place that might help get this to work for all parties. Okay. So if nobody's opposed, then we would defer this by unanimous consent to next month and work to talk to the police about it. Maybe I'll follow up with you, Mr. Reed, about it, and we can, see, and to follow Mr. Murphy's comments, maybe there's a way to figure out how to engage those other three players, into the discussion of basically the two spots that this committee has really discussed at length for deliveries in town, and how might we be able to work together to improve traffic flow and still get their deliveries done. Okay, thank you. Next, we'll review the request for a crosswalk across Prospect Street at Joy Street.
So this request came in from a resident of Joy Street. Just notes that people go very fast on Prospect and don't often let pedestrians cross. And this would be the general location. Just trying to get a
Sure.
street view real quick. Oops.
Oh,
You're talking about Joy Street?
Yeah,
Yeah, but you got a
So,
picture up here.
Joy Street is here. Obviously Prospect is very busy, and you've got a crosswalk, a sidewalk on this, a somewhat sidewalk here. So that's the request.
Yeah, the sidewalk on both sides there, yeah.
all right. Well, I don't see anybody from the public here to represent this. We'll open it up to the committee for discussion. I mean, Prospect Street sidewalk and crosswalk discussions go back as long as I've been on this.
Back into
Work
the
group.
90s.
20 years, plus more than 20 years. I mean, I get it, but I think we need additional improvements. And I know there are some, there's quite a few plans that have been generated over the years. But I guess the question specific to us right now is whether a crosswalk at this location is both warranted and a good idea. Would it be safe, Mr. Rowland?
Yeah, I've been walking this area quite a bit lately, and crossing Prospect Street is a hazard. It's tough. Traffic flows very quickly both directions, even in this area. I think it's a great idea. I'd love to see a crosswalk there. I'd suggest putting it to the sort of the north or west side of that intersection. And I can't tell if it needs to go slightly at an angle to get over to the sidewalk.
You think here?
Yeah, it seems like it's a better place to stand because there's no parking on Joy Street on that side, as I recall. So there's better visibility when you're standing right there for cars to see you and then slow down. And then get across to the
That's the
sidewalk.
best spot for it, I think.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gardner, could you repeat that?
I think that's the best spot for it.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or further discussion?
If I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Murphy.
is that corner the better corner or is the other side just simply for a line of sight for both ways? I think it kind of gets tight towards the Milk Street side. If it's on that closer to town, that northern corner, it doesn't really put us to a sidewalk. Or at least the other side puts us to the sidewalk. I just see more people walking down. Now, granted, I'm limited in that area, but kind of crossing on the hydrant side with traffic than the other way.
My sense is that the other side might be better because the traffic is likely to be going faster coming down the hill, and you'd see you'd have a better line of sight of the folks on the west side of Joy than on the east side.
And there may be cars queuing up on Joy Street to get
Like
out of
where
the
that car
intersection.
is.
Yeah, they wouldn't see a pedestrian trying to cross the street.
Yeah, I understand. I just thinking the hedges and everything else there's not a lot of safe area, at least on the other side. You have the opening, of the street kind of there for the most part if there's no car there, but I understand there's no good answer.
If you moved down by the hydrant, that's you got right straight across the street, then it's opened up a little more.
But don't you think though that here you've got, if you have somebody here, they're being hidden by the signs, the pole, the heavy hedge. Whereas here, there's more visibility on this corner
That's my sense.
as you're coming,
Right.
you're more apt to see a person here crossing than here.
There, right. That was my point about coming down the hill as well.
I agree.
I guess I would offer that, I mean, the approach, I'm coming from that corner where the hydrant is, the approach is coming from, like, you would be hidden from folks going, it looks like in this situation, northbound. I'm not quite oriented.
Yeah, facing northwest in this
Okay.
photo.
Okay,
And this area, Patrick, just so you know, like, this is essentially a hill that goes down and people really speed going towards Milk Street.
okay.
Um,
I would say without experiencing the area the same way that you all do, and I would defer to probably your best judgment on it. My initial reaction when I saw this was that you really need two crosswalks here, one over Joy where that walking path is kind of terminating at Joy today, and then on the corner that's shown here, crosswalk right here, just because it kind of seems like that's the movement people are making, right? You have to cross Prospect somewhere, and people are on this side of the street, so they're going to either, it seems like to end in a sidewalk on Prospect Street on the other side of the road, you'd have to be at that hydrant corner first, unless if you want to terminate in someone's driveway before you get over to the sidewalk. I'm not sure if I'm articulating that well, but if you put a crosswalk here, it doesn't seem like there's really a walking path on the on Prospect Street. So yeah, my initial reaction was to put one across Joy and then put one stretching from the hydrant corner to where the sidewalk is actually located on Prospect Street. That being said, I don't know the grade issues and the speed issues the same way you all do. So
I see your point. I mean, where you would do two crosswalks at 90 degrees.
That's right.
Oh, you mean? are you
Across
you're
Joy
saying
and
one going here
yeah, and then across.
and then here?
Yeah.
Is that what you
Two
mean,
of them
Patrick?
work out better.
Or are you
actually-
saying two parallel?
So your first was accurate across Joy.
Mhm.
And then across here.
And actually, I was thinking where the hydrant was, the hydrant side, and
So
the
you're
reason,
thinking here to here?
yeah, and the reason why I would put it on the other side of Prospect is just because of the sidewalk situation. It seems like there's actually a sidewalk, whereas if you put it closer to us in this image here, it looks like you're putting a crosswalk that ends right in someone's driveway apron. Maybe it's not a huge deal, but that was just my general rationale. I do hear the comments on the hedging being quite tall on the opposite corner, but I think because the approach down the hill, if I'm understanding correctly, you'd be actually looking at the person crossing. And as you cross, you have a little bit more time for the folks who are coming up the hill to see you. That's my general sense on it. But again, I think any crosswalk here would be appropriate, just to give people a means of crossing Prospect. And I'd kind of defer to the group on where the best location is. But that's just my initial reaction was, yeah, one across Joy and one on the far side in this image across Prospect.
So I would, my comment on that is that I think for visibility reasons, I still think it's better on this near side of this intersection. And yes, it probably will direct you straight into that driveway apron. But the apron is the sidewalk also. That's town land, the right of way. So it actually gives a nice curb cut to get up onto the sidewalk. So I think that still works quite well on this side of the intersection.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion, sure.
Thank you. So we have a motion to add a crosswalk across Prospect Street on the northwest side of Joy Street. And then do you want to add into that, it's your motion, Mr. Rowland, across Joy Street as well, or just start off with the one on Prospect and then evaluate, or it's up to you, do both or just one?
I'm fine with another crosswalk, but there really isn't a walking path on that side of Prospect Street. So there's not going to be a lot of pedestrian traffic crossing Joy at that intersection.
Right.
So I don't think we really need it.
It's gonna get worn out too with the turning movements.
Yep.
There. All right, so the
Especially
motion.
That's Barrett's truck route.
Yeah. The motion on the table, if I may, Mr. Rowland, correct me if I'm wrong, is to install a crosswalk across Prospect Street on the northwest corner of Joy Street.
Correct.
And is there a second?
Second that.
All right, so the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, how do you vote, Mr. Rowland?
Aye.
Mr. Reed?
Aye.
Mr. Gardner?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
I'm gonna have to vote no. I think it needs to be on the other side.
And chair votes aye. Thank you. So that's a recommendation as well to the town manager, correct, Ms. Mooney?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure we weren't gonna, the DPW wasn't taking that as doing it. Let's make sure that
No,
the town,
everything will be reviewed with the town manager first.
thank you. I want to make sure she's all right with it before something like that. And next we have a discussion regarding the possible loading zone on Federal Street from noon to 4 to replace the no parking or no standing area by the hub. And so this ties back a little bit to the discussion that we had a few minutes ago on Easy Street, where just opposite of the red line in the photo is the no parking, no standing zone. Now that's what's typically used for deliveries, and they put their they do two things there. The ramp goes down onto the crosswalk, and then when the loading truck is in that position, vehicles can't make a right-hand turn from Main Street onto Federal Street without going into the other lane, interfering and causing a conflict with the eastbound or southbound traffic on Federal Street trying to enter Main. So you essentially cause a backup all the way of Main Street that happens as a result of the congestion at that one corner. And so we've last year, the work group and the select board agreed to designate that that corner a no standing zone. And right there. Thank you. That's incredibly helpful. So from the sign next to the tree, next to the green bench, back to the crosswalk. Now they've continued to use that somewhat, I guess, out of necessity, though I have noticed that the Main Street loading zones are sometimes open right there while they're using this zone. But that being said, the recommendation, or excuse me, the suggestion before us would be to create a loading zone where the white van is, to allow for loading to happen there. And as such, I believe then be able to really hopefully promote enforcement of the no standing zone. So I guess that's the question is, do we want to suggest to the select board that we would eliminate those parking spaces, which are quite popular, I guess I would say, and heavily used for by the public for somewhat grab and go from the hub and the post office for a period of time, or not? And I'll open that up for discussion. I believe it was Mr. Sylvia who brought this forward. If you'd like to speak first on it, you're welcome to, or we can go right to the work group.
Yeah, this is me and Officer Mac talked about this. Yeah, they're having a lot of issues with that jitterbug trailer getting off right where the no parking, no standing is. I'm assuming they have given tickets at points, but they just take the tickets. We just figured on that side, even if it was just in the afternoon, there were a couple options that we discussed. I didn't think if you were going to lose parking spots, there was also the option of getting the one that on Main Street is tough for the jitterbug trailers to get in and out of anyway, because when there's cars parked on each side of that crosswalk, they have trouble getting in and out sometimes. What is the chances of that's also a possibility, is maybe eliminating that one and creating it over where we're proposing. Still keeping the no parking, no standing, but just that other one would be a loading zone. It would open up, I think, 4 or 5 spots on Main Street where that loading zone is presently. I know the Miles Reese and stuff use that. But this is more about trying to get off of Main. I mean, I've been stuck in it many times and there's just nothing you can do. You just have to wait till Federal Street clears before you even go, because they can't even see you on Main Street. It was just a proposal, and there was other issues of maybe if gaining spots down at the Oak Street one, considering there's 2 loading zones right there. There's one behind the Rosencrown and one in front of the movie theater. Maybe changing the times. This might be an issue that we could go about, like you talked about, really looking at the loading zone areas and really nailing down something with times and everything so that they're all the same. Because there's somebody that's going to be bringing other ones up pretty soon, I'm sure, on the next month or two, that was talking about putting one up on Center Street, stuff like that. So it might be a good idea to kind of look at overhauling the whole loading zones in town, trying to figure out where the best places are. Maybe the truck drivers are involved, and that's a good idea, because I think the previous traffic planner got them involved and it seemed to help. So this was just one to propose, just to alleviate the Federal Street problem.
Ms. Mooney? Thank you, Ms. Sylvia.
Can I make a suggestion similar
Please.
to what you did with Easy Street, which is to defer this to the next month so we can get the police involved. And in the meantime, I can reach out to the different companies and ask that they join the next meeting, so that they can hopefully provide some feedback on this as well. I was just actually, as Ray was speaking, I was thinking, they have certain routes mapped out in different different directions that they try to drive in through town. And if we suddenly, instead of letting them go down Federal Street where they loop around the corner towards the boat, they now have to go a completely opposite way and come back down Federal Street. And I don't know, I think maybe it might be helpful to have them be part of the conversation so they can give us some insight as well, as to how they use these loading zones, or when they don't use them, the other spaces that they use.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think that, this is a big maybe. They all have pluses and minuses, but we've kind of over the years, we've done a lot of work trying to accommodate them and create the different loading zones, but maybe we could have a renewed effort towards this doesn't have to be, I hate to use the word global, but we're still talking about like 4 blocks global, right? If we could just look at, put a box around the core district really, and try to figure out, where and when loading zones can be done in a way that will impact both traffic and parking to the least, as least as possible would be a good idea. So, I would favor deferring this and seeing what we could do to get a further discussion and a little bit more of a macro look at the loading zones. Mr. Murphy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this committee has been very kind with loading zones through advocates and everything else, and putting loading zones in place and listening to reasons. And honestly, I'm not in favor of this change. I think we have a no standing, no stopping, and we have people who are just disregarding it. So I think, bring them to the table, and that's great, and be a partner, but they need to buy into this as well. We're the ones making all the concessions, and we're still being forced into addressing issues that are being created by the drivers and the deliveries. And the same thing, and I mentioned it earlier, the loading zone on the left side of Main Street's wide open, but they park on Federal Street because it's easy for them, and they're not taking into account any of the flow of traffic at all. And I think just moving it across the street, even if there was a loading zone, that section of street is still rather tight. I think we still have the same issues and people still parking up against the billboard and stuff. So, but I'm in support of talking about this, but I think we need the PD here as well.
I couldn't have said it better. My observation is that there is a bit of a do what's easiest, not always considering public interest.
If I may also ask Chief Pittman to have Officer Mack as well, because I think he's a resource we really need to tap into. He's down there, he's talking to these guys, and I think that would be if he was available, would be really important.
I think that's a great idea. Anybody have anything further? So we'll defer this discussion on loading zones for agenda item next month by unanimous consent, unless I hear otherwise. Okay, thank you. We have a review request to eliminate on-street parking on Coffin Street or make Coffin Street one-way running from Union Street to Washington Street, and keep on-street parking on the west side of the road, and mark a dedicated loading zone on the pavement by the Lobster Trap. So we have a request from Mr. McCarthy. I don't see him here. In full disclosure, I have done work in the past for Mr. McCarthy, but at this address, but it's been some years and I don't actively work for him. So we'll open it up for discussion. Coffin Street, I think as you all know, between Union, running from Union, behind the Lobster Trap, and the Lobster Trap often puts kegs and cones and whatnot along the side of the building there. So I've often wondered about, to tell you the truth. So here we have it for discussion. I think one of the things about one-way streets that we always have to consider is that you take away a lane of traffic, then that moves those vehicles to another road in some cases. So, and you eliminate an ability for cars to loop back into town, perhaps. I'm not necessarily for or against it, but I think for discussion purposes, we always want to be really considering all of the pros and cons before a recommendation to change a road from two-way to one-way. So not having Mr. McCarthy here, I'll just open it up for general thoughts and discussion that the work group might have on the request. Mr. Sylvia.
Yeah, I was asked just to mention something about this one too, is the yellow trailer there that's actually shown in one of the pictures is usually left there for a few hours. So it becomes technically like I guess a personal parking spot. So you got the cone issue plus that possible issue. So like the Legion can't get their deliveries from that loading zone because there's usually one of the trailers parked there and there's nothing going in or out of it. Not sure if that's, I haven't seen it. I was just asked to bring that up, that is a possible issue also, is the loading zone could be getting abused also.
I almost feel like we need the police input on this one as well, not to cut discussion off, certainly have discussion, but I sort of wonder some of the implications in terms of, what we're seeing and what should or shouldn't be happening there.
And if I may, I think this is a loading zone affecting one restaurant where we try to usually do, loading zones that would affect several restaurants. We already have, I can't remember how long ago we talked about it, but in front of the Brotherhood, with the summertime, there's a quasi loading zone that develops out of there, and street blockings and, parking space being taken up. So I think this corner needs a lot more to look at than what we have right now. And you're right, Mr. Chair, that we need the PD here as well.
We could wrap this into the next discussion as well. I mean, as I said, when I was saying, 4 blocks, this goes a little further than what I had in mind, but maybe this is the limit, the southerly limit sort of the study area. It probably makes sense to kind of look at it from, really from this location to Broad Street up to Center Street and back, and what we have kind of going on in that, and that's a lot of our downtown circulation area as well. I don't know that it's only a loading zone issue though. You do certainly, it's that road is tight with the parking, without a doubt, but it's also a lot of parking spaces that, to suggest, eliminating, I think would be, I would have a very hard time given how closely we look, at every parking space really. And it's worked for a lot of years, and maybe it really is just the corner, but yeah, I agree. I think we need to look at it a little bit more.
Wish to defer this as well for the police to be here and
Yeah.
ask Mr. McCarthy and possibly even a rep from the Lobster Trap.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
Okay.
We'll defer that on unanimous consent unless I hear otherwise. Okay, that sounds good. And next we'll move on to item 9, which is a review of a request for a curb cut at 26 Easy Street, resulting in the elimination of one off-street parking space. And I will recuse myself from this matter and turn it over to Mr. Gardner. And I know that Mr. Reed is here to represent it.
Yes, if I may go forward, this is Attorney Arthur Reed. I represent Not So Easy LLC, which is the owner of the property at 26 Easy Street, which you have up on the screen right now.
Right.
My client proposes to create a driveway with 2 parking spaces at the westerly side of the property, as shown, as the pointer is running over right now. The result of that will be to eliminate a parking space at the street right in front of those. Meanwhile, there's an existing curb cut further down toward Easy Street, which is not in use at the present time, but which has a yellow line in front of it as a result of its having been used in the past. That was actually the vehicle entrance into the building when it was Harry Gordon's garage many years ago. And this shows the streetscape, and the area at the left with the yellow line is the no parking area that would be created in order for this driveway to come in. The driveway would contain, as I mentioned, 2 parking spaces. We'd be giving up 1 on-street parking space and gaining 2 off-street parking spaces. But with the added bonus that along the building in the area which is now marked with the yellow line, that area would be available for parking between the 2 yellow lines as shown. Again, a yellow line picking up again toward the right as you get over toward Easy Street. So the net result of this project as proposed would be that 1 parking space on street would be eliminated, 2 off street would be created, and with the elimination of the yellow line and the location as noted here, an additional parking space on street would be obtained. So we think that this is a win-win situation for the property owner and for the town. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from other members?
I'm not opposed to this at all. I think it is going to be a net gain. So I don't have any reason to oppose it. I wanted to just ask the question, and maybe there's a reason for this, as to why is the parking on Oak Street on that north side rather than on the south side? Was there a reason for not? I think you'd gain more parking spaces by running it that full length down the south side, and you'd have more of a natural parking flow, parking on the right as opposed to the left.
Mickey, my guess would be just because of the turning radius is coming off of behind Rose Crown and coming onto Easy Street.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a reason for it. I just was curious as to, is it worth reconsidering that? Maybe not, just a thought.
I'd make a motion to approve.
I've got to say, just looking at this, not relevant to what we're presenting here today, but just as somebody who, like the rest of us, has to drive through there frequently to go to the boat or to go down to Broad Street. It's actually fairly tough looking to the right to see traffic that's coming down Easy Street. And I think that unless the cars on the south side were well back from Easy Street, there would be some degree of impediment to what's already a somewhat difficult situation as far as visibility is concerned. That would be my only comment. Again, nothing to do with the application here, but just as a citizen.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
Generally, I agree with the intent and notice that there's also probably a positive benefit in terms of parking spaces, but from a best practices and transportation planning perspective, introducing curb cuts into areas that are supposed to be walkable is generally not desirable. So I'll probably abstain from this one, but I do think, I can see some benefit here from a parking perspective. it's generally for me, it's understanding the intent of the public about that balance of trade-offs between parking and pedestrian needs and maintaining a walkable urban downtown. I'm not quite there yet in terms of getting a good understanding of priority. So I will abstain from this one, but appreciate the presentation.
Will we have a quorum about that?
What's that?
We're gonna have a quorum with just 3 of us voting on it then?
hmm,
Might be better just to vote no.
I can do that if it helps the vote move forward.
I mean, Patrick doesn't have to abstain until the actual vote, so he can take part of the deliberation and discussion, and then when it comes to voting, he can abstain, and your 3 votes will still be fine.
That was my question. Thank you, Eric.
Did anyone second Steve's motion, by the way?
No.
No.
I actually have another question for the applicant, and that is, when you look at the drawing in front of us, you can see the curb cut stones right at the proposed new opening. And I'm just curious as to, I can't really tell, does it leave the sidewalk wide enough for, like a 3-foot at least path for wheelchair access down the sidewalk once you put those stones in?
I don't have a direct answer to that because obviously I'm not the designer. I wonder if I may ask, without his participating in the discussions, Mr. Gasparo for any insight he might have as a factual matter on that point.
Yes, I would, as a member of the public and not as a work group member, the stones would be sloped down so that they would, while they would be curb stones, they would be tipped, if you would, so that you would be able to maintain that cross path there, if you would, along the sidewalk.
Art, how wide is that sidewalk?
Say it's about 3 feet.
And you're saying that the addition of the curb stones won't interfere with the
Right,
wheelchair?
it'd be laid and, and perhaps the curb stones aren't used. I drew them, with a hope to demonstrate a rounding, if you would. But the idea is certainly to maintain walkability, actually improve the area really compared to where the other curb cut is, so that you would be able to still, go essentially in both directions into the driveway and then traverse along the sidewalk without interruption.
Yeah, so I would be in favor of this kind of on the condition that the sidewalk does not become less of an accessible sidewalk. Still meets ADA requirements for, traversing down the sidewalk.
I have no problem adding that to my motion.
Great, thank you. So I'll second that then.
And that motion made and seconded.
Well,
Any
Could I
further
first ask
discussion?
someone to repeat the motion so I can get it down? It was kind of broken up and I missed it the first shot, please.
My motion was to approve as long as, and Harry added in, or Mickey added in that the sidewalk maintained accessibility. Is that correct?
Yep, good.
Okay, it's motion made and seconded. Those in favor?
Those in favor?
I'll vote aye.
I'm an aye.
Jack and I.
Abstain.
Okay, so Steve, Jack, Mickey are all yes, and Patrick is an abstention. Right?
Oh, I have it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That'll bring us on to and thank you very much, Mr. Gardner. That'll bring us on to the next item on the agenda, which is other business topics, not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance of the meeting. And/or I would put this as any future agenda topics that any work group members may have. If there's anything you'd like to bring up. All right, hearing none. I think we probably have enough of agenda topics for next month from this month. So we'll carry that stuff forward, see what we can do to queue up some of those. And we have the approval of the minutes from October 21st for your consideration. They had a draft in the packet. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns on those minutes? All right, hearing none, we'll consider those adopted by unanimous consent. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Before you do that, Mr.
Yes.
Cassidy has had his hand raised.
I'm sorry, who did?
Billy
Oh.
Cassidy.
Go ahead, Billy.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to say thank you for everyone's time, but I have a question I wanted to ask when you were discussing these loading zones, and I don't know who to direct the question to, but I think Jack, in his role as former parking commissioner or what have you, can we give Danny Mac a book of $1,000 tickets?
No,
No.
Come on, Erica.
they're all regulated in terms of how much they can ticket people. Sorry.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Now about that tow truck now. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Moved.
Motion made and seconded. Mr. Rowland, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Gardner? I think he froze. I think that's an aye. Mr. Murphy
Aye.
and Mr. Reed.
Aye.
And thanks again for joining us, Mr. Reed. Look forward to continuing working with you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Eric.